complexity is something that can be looked at from so many different directions. There's complexity in harmony, in orchestration, in counterpoint, and there's also complexity in emotion. And I think that the reason why time is a complex piece of music is because it has the ability to take so few amount of harmonic resources and really affect the viewer emotionally. And it repeats 5 different chords over and over again. It has A minor, E minor, G, D, A minor, C major 7, G, and D. And it repeats that throughout the whole song, and sort of each pass, or each time it repeats it, it introduces new things. So a new string voice, it introduces the brass eventually, and it continues to increase the amount of voices and the amount of instruments playing at once, and overall increasing in volume, but also, again, in instrumentation. And eventually, at bar 305, near the ending of the piece, everything sort of cuts off, and all you have is the piano and the high strings. And then eventually, it's just the solo pianos. So it goes from being super, super quiet to being super, super loud to being super quiet, and then you eventually get to the end. So it's almost like a short journey in a sense. So let's go all the way to the beginning and check out what's going on. So here is what the chords sound like. So as you can see, it's relatively simple, but I think that what that C major 7 adds is something really sort of very sort of warm. So we're taking that and we're doubling it with that synth piano that we used at the beginning, and then we are also doubling that with the Woodchester piano, which is a much more, and it has this sort of light pad underneath it. So that is just sort of fading in. We've automated that to slowly but surely fade in. And so here's that together. And in addition to that, we also have this very, very subtle synth rhythm happening beneath everything, which again is just super, super subtle, but it adds a little bit of movement. So the first pass of the progression just only has these very quiet booms, the synth rhythm, and then the piano. And when we repeat it, we introduce another voice, which is these synth strings, which are doubling with our strings, our real strings. And you can see in the strings there's only one voice. That's being doubled in the cellos here. And here is that. Another thing that we've done here is we've taken this patch. Let's check out where this is from. So this is called the Bane Beat 5/4 time from the Dark Zebra. And we've taken that. And it sounds like that on its own, but when you just click it once, you get that sound. And we put a stereo delay. We put a couple sort of EQs to shape it. Here's what it sounds like on its own. Then so it looks like we're cutting off a whole lot of the high end and really just reserving the middle. And again, that just adds a little bit of movement, a little bit of rhythm. So that's what we have for sort of that pass of the progression. And then we introduce another instance of this sort of hit. You can see it's just sort of subtly repeating it. This is increasing in dynamics. We have that automating. And so it's just adding a little bit more movement over what we had previously. And you can see the booms are just continuing throughout the whole entire piece. But what we've done here is we've added another string voice. So this bottom voice is doubling the bass. This is doubling that high voice. There's just two voices here. And then on bar 240.5, I guess, we introduce more voices here. We bring in this to double our cellos here. So that's something that it does right there. Let me just pull up a piano. So it goes. So you can see that movement in the strings is just, again, supplying a little bit of sonic interest and helping things flow a little better. And then we're doubling the melody now in the violas, again, just to add more dynamic and a little bit more of a heavy sound. And we've also brought in Hans Zimmer strings, the 60 violins patch, which sounds really, really nice and lush. Here's just that on its own with the concertina violins, or concertina strings. It blends in super well. It has a certain lushness, and the way, since they were both recorded at Air, I think I mentioned that earlier, they really blend together so well. And just the sound of having 60 violin players within the same hall just creates this beautiful, beautiful sound that I think works well contextually with a lot of these other strings that are happening at the same time. So the synth is the same, the pianos are the same, pretty much everything is the same, but we've also added in brass. And you can see we have Berlin brass, which is sort of your standard sort of orchestral brass, recorded in their normal seating position. So we have just these chords that are programmed, just simple triad chords that is being supported by the tubas. And then we have this Albion 3 patch, which I think just really has that silky Hans lush sound to it that really blends well with the Berlin brass. It adds a certain, again, a sense of warmth, adds sort of a fuzzy quality. You could see like the Berlin brass on its own sounds good, but it's pretty direct. But the Albion 3 makes it a lot more, I don't know, orchestral, makes it sound a little bit more like it was recorded in a bigger hall. And then we have the Symphony Series brass trombones. You can see I called it Hans Zimmer trombone, so I tend to do this a lot. I call some of my samples names based off of different composers that it reminds me of. And I don't know what it is about Symphony Series brass that just really reminds me of Hans. But you could see the short articulations are also Hans Zimmer horns, Hans Zimmer bones, short. It just helps me with organization. So this continues, and then we have a euphonium actually come in, which is doubling the melody that we've added with our cellos. And you can see what the brass is really doing in this piece is it's just warming everything up. And then finally, we have the sort of big climax section. And let's just look at the brass for now. But we have these brass shorts that come in. Let's just solo out a brass. And we've doubled the melody with the horns a 3 patch, so 3 French horns. Really pronounces the melody more, and these brass shorts are doubled with these. So when we get to this last section here with the last horn voice coming in, he's really trying to highlight these second suspensions. So he has this horn line, which, we have a major second. Another major second. And the whole idea of this is, of course, with a lot of those noir-like qualities of the score, we have a lot of this type of stuff, and he's just taking that and using it in this context. And it just adds a little bit of emotional sort of tugging to the overall sound. Next, we have the guitars, which come in here on bar 272. And we have a few different things going on. So we have a more clean guitar with a little bit of crunch. And then we have these sort of guitar strums. And then we have a more distorted guitar, which sounds like this. This next thing is we have this sub bass, which is just lying under the strings. Lying under the strings and the brass. And that is all that we really have for this big section, apart from these percussion hits, which we have this bombo ensemble, which is doubled by the Hans Zimmer low booms. And then finally it reaches its conclusion right at bar 305, where it cuts pretty much everything off other than these hits, high strings, and then the piano. So the ending of Inception leaves a question. The question is, has he finally gotten back to reality? Because he told himself that he would never look at his children's faces unless he was in the real world, so that he had always something tugging him home. Or has he accepted the fact that the dream has become his reality? And I think that what Christopher was trying to go for is he has gotten home and the story sort of has concluded, but at the same time, we don't totally know that because the totem keeps spinning. So is he in the dream world? Is he in reality? Does it really matter? These are all questions that are being asked at the end here, and the music ends on this D major with this piano reverse, which really leaves that question completely open to your individual interpretation.